Hey, it's Ross from RossLukeman.com. Today I want to talk to you about the order of steps when it comes to installing an electrical system, and not just installing the batteries or the inverter in a van or RV, but what is the entire process from start to finish, everything from the items on the roof to the wires in the walls. What order do you want to take to install all that? And this is really important because if it's done out of order or you forget a step, it can be really expensive and frustrating to have to go back a few steps and take up material to add a wire that was forgotten or an item that was forgotten. So this can save you a lot of headaches. And then this process is the same process that is used at van and RV shops. And what I'm going to tell you today, they will charge you maybe $50,000 to $100,000 for the items that I'm going to tell you about today. So if you follow this process, you can do a professional installation for your van or RV electrical system. And this could also work for trailers or buses, things like that, any mobile electrical system. So without further ado, let me start out with number one. Not very ceremonious, but remove the factory floor is going to be step number one. You want to get that out of there. We're going to get it down to the vehicle shell, and we're going to punch through the shell, essentially, is phase one. And you'll notice that's what we're going to be doing in these first few steps. So step number two is going to be install the shore power inlet. So this is typically going to be at the driver's side rear, or you can mount it in a weatherproof box underneath the vehicle. But we are going to mount that and drill through the vehicle, either to mount the shore power inlet or to run the conduit up through the floor. One way or another, we're going to be punching through the shell. So you want to install that inlet. Number three is the roof. So this is kind of a multi-step. Number three has several facets to it. You're going to want to put roof racks in. I'm not a huge fan of roof racks, but if you want to do that, you need to go ahead and put that in, because next up we're going to interface with the vent fan, the air conditioner, the awnings, if you have an electric awning especially, and if you're going to have a cell booster antenna. So all of these items are going to punch through the roof. With your vent fan and your air conditioner, you're going to be cutting large holes in the roof. So we are putting these in early, before we put in any insulation, any sound deadening, any paneling. We want to go ahead and make those large penetrations in the roof. So that is step three. And then a lot of those, like your solar panels, your air conditioner, your vent fan, they're going to have wires. So these are going to be the first wires in your electrical system that are going to be hanging down. You're typically going to coil those up. In the case of solar, if it's out in the sun, you can put electrical tape around the ends of the wires to keep it from shorting out on anything. But those wires are going to be coiled up, and you can zip tie them up at the roof of your vehicle. But that is step number three, the roof. Now, if you want even more help with your overall power system, I have a resource that you may be interested in called the Ultimate Van Power Cheat Sheet. It's got a discussion of the three major charging sources that you're going to find in vans and RVs, which are solar, shore, and alternator power. It's going to talk about how they each have strengths, but they also have times when they fall short. But when you bring them together and combine them in a holistic power strategy, it's going to make sure that you're covered no matter where you go out on the road, so you can enjoy what you went out there to do, and you're not going to be worried about running out of power. There's also a discussion about different battery types and the strengths and weaknesses of those. That's going to help you narrow in on which battery type is going to be right for your project. And then lastly, there is a really cool diagram that's going to show essentially your entire system on one page. It's going to show the three major charging sources at the top and how that power makes its way through the system to charge your battery bank, and how it gets distributed to your end devices such as your air conditioner or your cell phone. For instance, how does the solar power come through off the roof, through the system, and end up powering your air conditioner? So it's a really illuminating diagram that's included with the Ultimate Van Power Cheat Sheet. To grab your own copy, all you have to do is click that link below or go to rosslukeman.com/vanpower. So with that, let's roll on to the next step. Number four is going to be fuel heaters, and these are going to run on diesel, gasoline, or propane. And this is mainly if you're going to be going off grid. If you're going to stay on the grid all the time, you can do an electric heater. But if you want to do off-grid camping, you're going to want to have some type of fuel for your heat. And I do recommend that you have a heater just to make your vehicle a 4-season vehicle. But I'll leave it at that. The heaters are typically going to punch through the floor because they have to bring in the combustion air and then blow out the exhaust underneath the vehicle. So they're actually going to drill through the floor typically, and you can put them inside your passenger seat or in the middle of the floor. I've done both of those, and this is one reason why we remove the floor. So we need to get down to that metal decking because we need to seal around so that the carbon monoxide is properly exhausted outside the vehicle and doesn't come in. So you need to get down to that bare metal floor. That's number 4, fuel heaters. Number 5 is going to be windows and flares. So again, we're dealing with the outer shell. We haven't done insulation yet. Windows and flares need to go in. And we could argue and say maybe this was step number 1. You could do this, but we're modifying the outer shell of the vehicle, and we want to do it pretty early in the process. So windows and flares is number 5. Number 6 is sound deadening. So what you'll notice is between the heaters, the air conditioners, the windows, we've punched all the holes in the floor, the wall, the ceiling, and now we can come in and add the sound deadening. And I would recommend doing this. It could be like a Noico 80 mil sound deadening. There are several brands, but this really does make a difference because your vehicle is going to sound like a tin can going down the road. So you want to at least cover the wheel wells are a large source of noise. You can add the sound deadening as well as insulation in a later step. But you want to add some sound deadening, and then especially in the sliding door, if you have a van, open that paneling and add some sound deadening, and it really makes that door sound solid when you slam it. So it's going to make it sound less like a tin can. So that's number 6, sound deadening. Step number 7 is wall and ceiling insulation. I didn't say floor insulation. We're going to use something a little bit different from that for that. But on the walls and the ceiling, you can use a wool. You can use Thinsulate. In the past, I've used spray foam. I've had good results with that. Some people are scared of that. But either one of those 3 insulations would be good at this time. That is step number 7. Number 8, insulate and reinstall the floor. So you can use a mini cell foam for the floor. Also at this point, if you are going to add any hydronic heater lines, or they have electrical heater pads, either 12 volt or 120 volt. I would recommend 12 volt if you can find it. But you can put any heating elements underneath the floor at this time and go ahead and reinstall the floor. Now the reason we put the fuel heater in early is, as I said, that's going to sit right on the sheet metal, and you may have to notch out the floor to go around that heater. So that is number 8, and now the floor has been reinstalled. Number 9, create the power system paneling. So the power system is going to have some heavy items hanging on the wall, and this is kind of a special case. So I would typically use a 1/2 inch American birch or Baltic birch, typically a 1/2 inch thick material. Baltic birch is going to be the strongest, but American birch, it has a soft core, but it will be strong enough for most applications. But you need that thicker paneling, and you're just going to find the general area in your van where your power system is going to go. And typically you're going to go from maybe the rear column at the rear doors to the first kind of structural beam, and just cut your paneling to fit that. You may have to create kind of a jog or a curve where it meets the rear paneling. Get it to form fit in there, and this is going to be different from the way that you panel the rest of your van. So at this point it's just raw wood, but you're going to create that paneling. Number 10, mock up the power system. I like to use a lot of double-sided tape for the small items, and I'll take my big items and set them on styrofoam or whatever and just kind of lay it out. It's hard to imagine until you get everything out of the box and kind of set it there to see what kind of space you have to work with. And also you need to create little wire highways between the components. So I'll make a row of components at the top and maybe a middle row and a bottom row, and I'll have little alleyways or little highways where the wires can fly by and interconnect all the devices. And you're going to have a couple of those vertical and a couple of those horizontal, depending on the complexity of your electrical system and how many components you have. But it's okay to rearrange it. A lot of people would assume that I would know on the first try how to lay it out, but sometimes you just kind of put the pieces, and it's like playing with blocks as a child. You're going to kind of lay it out and see what you think, and now I'm going to move this over here, and you can switch things around. So you don't have to be some kind of visionary to lay it all out on the first try. Use that double-sided tape, rearrange it 3, 4, 5 times if you need to until you're happy and everything looks good. And then we're going to move on to the next step. So after you mock it up, you're going to create the other power system structures. And what I mean is you might have a battery plate where you're going to create either a metal or wooden plywood plate that's going to bolt to the floor. I have done this out of steel, and I've also done this out of wood. But lately I've also just used the little L irons, the steel L-shaped pieces of steel, and you would just kind of buttress each battery on the floor, and you just bolt those L irons into the floor. And then once you do that, you can run the straps under the irons over each battery. So you'd run 2 straps. And these type of structures at this point, now that you've mocked up the system, you can go ahead and create those. The other thing that I've created in the past is sometimes I'll have a standoff for the distribution panel. So this would be your breaker box that also has a 12-volt fuse block. Sometimes they need to sit into some kind of cavity, and if you're just mounting everything to the wall, you need to kind of create a cavity. So you would create a standoff box to stick to the wall. Also, wheel well covers. Occasionally, if your electrical system is going around the wheel well, you're going to make a box for the wheel well so you can mount things to that box. And that will also reduce some of the noise coming out of that wheel well going down the highway. Number 12, as you might expect, we're going to pre-mount the power system. And I like to do a final finish on my power system paneling and make it look professional. And in order to do the painting after I've kind of mocked everything up, and oftentimes I'll have pencil lines and everything, I mount everything. So I'll put all the screws and mount everything in its final form. And this gives me a couple of things. It gives me screw holes when I do my final installation. I can just pop everything in really quickly. All the screw holes are there. The other thing it's going to give you is you have your final assembly. You're going to be able to drill your holes and cut your holes in the paneling to bring your wires through, because we are going to interconnect the power system components, but the job is to electrify the wires going out into the larger vehicle. So all those wires are going to be coming in from all over the vehicle into the power system, and we need them to typically pass through the paneling. And you don't know where to put those holes until you've laid everything out and you find a zone that's open for your wires to come through. So this is why I mount everything. It's a little bit tedious to mount it because we are going to take it back down, but it just really pays dividends later, and it makes your system just come together really nicely at the end. It's going to look easy later on because you did this prep work, basically. All right, so number 13 was mount your cable hole locations. So I kind of already went into that. Once everything's mounted, you're going to mark those holes, and go ahead and make everything, orthogonal. If you have a couple of holes next to each other, make sure they're at the same height. If you have a row of holes going down, make sure they're on a vertical line. Make it look like a professional did it. Number 14, remove all the components. So you knew that was coming. Number 15, cut and drill the power system paneling. So now that you pretty much have to take everything down, remove the paneling from the wall, go ahead and drill your holes. Sometimes if you have a place for the distribution panel, you're going to cut a big hole where all your wires can come through for the distribution panel. So you're going to need to take it down and throw it on a workbench to cut the holes and drill the holes. Number 16, you're going to add blocking behind the paneling. So typically this would be the same 1/2 inch material, and I will glue it behind the paneling, and we're trying to raise the paneling off of the frame of the vehicle so the wires can pass behind. So you're going to have a lot of wires that come behind this paneling, and you want them to be able to pop out where they need to pop out, but they've got to get behind the paneling. So you need to raise it off. And you're going to have to add that blocking pretty much everywhere so it's equivalently moved out from the wall in all areas of the paneling. Hopefully that made sense. Number 17, paint all power system structures and paneling. So this is a big push that I'm encouraging, and if you look through the history of my systems, you have a lot of raw wood in the beginning, and then you have a lot of finished wood at the end. So it's going to look professional. If you charge somebody at a van shop, you know, $30,000, $50,000 to do this work, you better not have raw wood on your power system paneling. It needs to all be finished. So if you're doing this as a do-it-yourselfer, take the time to do a nice semi-gloss black or taupe or tan, beige, something you can try to match the rest of your van. Really I would just paint it semi-gloss black if you're not sure. It's going to make the colors pop from your components, especially if you have nice blue, green, and red components. That black background is going to make everything look really vivid, and it just looks professional. So take the time to paint. Number 18, add a subframe to the entire vehicle. So aside from where your power system paneling is, you need to add what I call struts to the rest of the vehicle, and these would be plywood strips typically, and they're going to have blocking behind them to raise them off of the vehicle frame. Or maybe I'll show it this way. The frame is here, and you need to raise the plywood off of there, so there's a plenum behind them for those wires to fly by, and then the strut itself is going to allow you to screw in your final paneling, whatever that ends up being. Number 19, kind of random. We've got the solar wires coming in from way early in our process. Now we're going to run the cable for the alternator power. So if this is your stock alternator, you're going to typically connect at the engine battery, and oftentimes that cable is going to be maybe a 4 gauge, depends on your DC to DC charger. 4 gauge is a good bet nowadays for different chargers, and you're going to run that often under the vehicle to the back, and I would coil it wherever right underneath where your power system is going to be. You need to have enough length to go up in there and connect to your DC to DC charger, but run that red positive cable to your engine battery. Or if you're going to have a second alternator, you need to go ahead and put in that second alternator and run the positive red cable from that to the rear system. And again, you can coil it on the ground underneath the vehicle. Next up, we're going to do the negative, which is typically going to connect to the chassis. And for Ford and Mercedes, the Transit and the Sprinter van, they're going to have factory ground points that they want you to connect to. You're not going to typically connect to engine battery negative per their manuals, per their recommendations. They want you to connect to the chassis ground points. And this is going to do 2 jobs. It's going to be the negative, complete the negative circuit for the alternator charging, and it's also going to be the cable that ends up grounding your system for the safety ground. So that black cable is going to do 2 jobs. So we've got the positive and the negative now for the alternator charging, and the step number 21 is what we're on now, is bring the alternator cables inside. So you've routed them to typically the rear of the vehicle where the power system is, and now you need to oftentimes drill holes in the floor to bring them up right in the power system area. And this is why it was good to locate your batteries, build that battery plate, because you can see where your clear areas are on the floor. Now with these cables, sometimes I bring them up inside the box that's around the wheel well. So I'll pop them up right next to the wheel well through the metal, and those cables are hidden inside that box. And then I'll just pop out of the box right at whatever component, DC to DC charger or whatever. You can just pop out right under it and go into that device. So this is why some of those structures were made earlier, like the wheel well cover, things like that. We can now drill into them and bring our cables through them. Number 22 is a big one. This is sketch your electrical plan. And at this point, you're probably like, what is he talking about? We've been doing electrical, right? This whole time. So your electrical plan is, where are your outlets? Where is your water heater? Where is your stove? You can draw in some of the other things like the solar panels or the air conditioner that were already put in. But we need to draw a control panel in one location, and we can draw where our electrical system is, but all the little things, puck lights, basically anything that has a wire going to it. So it could be a power wire, it could be a thermostat wire, a control wire, whatever wire. We need to just draw a plan, and this is your plan, so it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't need to look like an architect did it, but you need to have one floor plan with every item in the van. And the way that I make these is I walk around with the clipboard and I say, okay, outlet there, outlet here, and I will mark all of those things. And so I'm literally looking around, okay, I've got a solar panel wires coming through the roof. Okay, solar panels right there. And I'll just make little circles for everything. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run wire by wire. So if I have an outlet right here and I need to go to the breaker box. So that's a big one on your plan, is where is your distribution panel? Distribution panel is going to have the breaker box and the fuse panel. And basically every wire in the entire vehicle is going to converge to that panel. And then the power system is going to power up that panel. The power is going to go out everywhere. So all your wires are coming back to that distribution panel. So you need to locate it. It's typically in your power system, but identify where exactly in the power system that is. Everything's going to go to it. And then this is the way to not forget a wire. You've got your plan, right? You've laid the groundwork. As you put in a wire, mark it off. Use a red marker if you want. And just mark each little circle, each little item. Okay, the air conditioner has a wire to it. The puck lights wired. Each puck light, okay. The bank of 4 puck lights in the back. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's run a wire to the front puck lights. 1, 2, 3, 4. Any dimmers you have, oftentimes the dimmers would go in the control panel. The wire's going to run from the power, the fuse block, to the dimmer, and then it's going to go to the puck lights. Number 23 is wire the van, which I pretty much just described. Go ahead and as you wire it, each wire, mark it off of your plan. Number 24, remount the power paneling and pass the wires through. So I'll have to show a photo here, but you're going to mount the power paneling to the wall, and you're going to bring all of the wires through that are from all over the van, and they're going to spit out at the power system in preparation for terminating them at the distribution panel. Mount the power system. So you got all those screw holes from earlier. You're just going to bing, bang, boom. You're going to mount everything there. And we're going to be preparing to install the cables in step number 26. We're almost done, I promise. But step number 26. Now, as far as installing the cables, everything should be off. Everything is typically off. You're not plugged into the power grid. Don't connect the batteries until the end. So it really doesn't matter what order you make the cables in. And what I like to do is I put the biggest cables first, maybe your battery cables, maybe a 4-aught or a 2-aught. Lay those up against the wall first. You're going to use the little cable mounts, screw those into the wall, hopefully on a nice horizontal line or vertical line, make it look nice. Lay your fat cables, I like to say, and then your medium cables and your skinny cables, and then your control wires. So you're going to layer it like a pyramid those large cables at the bottom, medium cables, skinny cables, and then the little tiny wires on top. So just, if you don't know what order to wire everything, just go largest cable first to smallest cable. Number 27, terminate everything at the distribution panel. So your wires were coming out of the wall. Now you mount that distribution panel and you're just going to terminate everything. You're going to tie all the wires in. And here in the US, that's going to be your 120 volt 3 conductor cables and your 12 volt 2 conductor cables. And that's going to give you overcurrent protection for all those lines going out into your vehicle so things don't catch on fire. It's very important. Number 28, complete the rest of the paneling and cabinetry. Now, I put this as just a quick little number 28. This is probably going to take you, a couple of months. But basically, you've run all the wires. The power system paneling is there. It could be the only paneling that exists in your entire vehicle. It's just one panel on one section of the wall. And you've got all this electrical equipment. But now you need to panel everything and go ahead and poke those wires through. At where the puck lights go, you're going to have to cut out for your puck lights, drop the wires through. The wires should be all there now. So you're just paneling. You're going to add your cabinetry. And as you might expect, number 29 is install, terminate, and test all devices. So you can't put in the refrigerator until you have a cabinet for the refrigerator to go in. So that's why we just did the cabinets. You can't put in the puck lights until you have a piece of paneling for the puck light to go in. So at this point, you're just going to be putting in, once you've got the paneling in the cabinets, you're going to be putting in puck lights and refrigerators and any device and just terminating all of your little outlets. You're going to wire those in and you're going to turn on the breaker or add the fuse and test as you go along. Make sure you wire things properly. But that is it. I have number 30. Enjoy your favorite beverage because you're done. You're done with the process. So as you can see, that was kind of intense. And that is why people charge tens of thousands of dollars for these systems. Hopefully that was useful. That took me years of experience and thousands of hours working on vans to figure out this order of steps. It's not obvious, and you can see why just having a design for your batteries and your inverter, it's not really the whole picture. This is the whole picture of how these systems go in to have a flawless power system that works, and you have all sorts of amenities, heating and cooling, lights, and the whole deal. So that's my process for installing entire electrical systems in vans and RVs. I hope that was useful. Again, if you want more help with your overall electrical system, you got to grab a copy of the Ultimate Van Power Cheat Sheet. Just click the link below or go to rosslukeman.com/vanpower. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.